In this video, we're going to talk more about safety, specifically oxyfuel gas welding and cutting. Now, why do we care about this? Okay, well, honestly, the oxyfuel gas welding and cutting safety is the same as any other brazing or soldering operation. You have to be very aware of what you're doing, and you have to be very aware of your surroundings. Okay, there's a lot of hazards that come with anything with gas torch welding, cutting, even, again, brazing is very close to welding from a safety perspective. Welders should be well trained in the function and operation of each part of an oxyfuel gas welding or cutting station. They should be trained and tested in proper methods of setting up the station, leak checking, lighting the torch, and shutting down the system. Welders need to be aware of the hazards involved in the use of fuel gas, oxygen, and shielding gas cylinders and how these cylinders are safely stored. These cylinders are high pressure and flammable gas filled. Okay, cylinders containing oxyacetylene and other high-pressure gases should always be stored in an upright position on an approved area or room and fastened to a rigid post or wall with steel bands or chains. We don't want these cylinders to fall over. In case it does fall over, the cylinder must always be stored with the safety cap in place. We do not want to leave regulators in the cylinders. Okay, when the cylinders are moved, they must always have their safety caps on. The reason is, if the cylinder falls over and knocks off the valve, okay, it's going to act like a missile. Okay, there's no way to stop it when that valve is knocked off. It could actually go through walls, including metal truck walls. Cylinders should be moved using a cylinder truck or tipped and rolled on edge by a trained operator using both hands. Acetylene gas must never be used at a working pressure on a gauge above 15 psi. Let me repeat that. Acetylene gas you never work with on a pressure above 15 psi. Oxygen and other gases should not be used on pressures greater than half the highest reading on the gauge. If the highest reading on an oxygen working gauge is 40 psi, oxygen should never be used at pressures greater than 20 psi. When all welding is complete and the flame is extinguished, the system must be bled of all gases from the cylinder outlet to the torch tip. This is done by closing both cylinder tank valves, opening the torch valves, and turning in the regulator adjustment screws until all gauges read 0. Then close the torch valves and turn out the regulator adjusting screws until they feel loose. You do not ever want to leave oxygen in the system. Always light the oxyfuel gas torch using an approved torch lighter to avoid burning your fingers. An approved torch lighter is not a cigarette lighter or a match. Never point the torch tip at anyone while lighting it or using it. That flame goes out further than you think it does and can. Never point the torch at cylinders, regulators, hoses, or anything else that can be damaged and cause a fire explosion. Never lay a lighted torch down on a bench or workpiece. And do not ever hang it up while lighted. If it's not in your hands, it must be shut off. To prevent fires, explosions, you want to check the valves and flashback arresters. You want to make sure they're installed on all oxyfuel gas welding and cutting equipment. A flashback arrestor is installed between the torch and the hose. They're used to prevent reverse flow of a burning fuel gas and oxygen mixtures from the torch to enter the hose regulators and cylinders. When cutting with an oxyfuel gas torch, clear the area of all combustible material. To add safety to the operation, at least one fire watch should be posted with an extinguisher to watch for possible fires. The fire watch is a person who carefully watches for fires that may start in the area where welding or cutting is being done. On occasions when hot work is done, hot metal or sparks can fall and land on something flammable. The fire watch must be trained to use the fire extinguisher and be trained to notify others that a fire has started. The fire watch must know the correct escape routes from the area of the fire. It's recommended that welding and cutting is done at least 35 feet away from flammable materials. Any flammable material that cannot be moved should also be covered with flame-proof or flame-retardant blankets or covers and also wetted down to prevent fires. There are 4 classifications of flammable materials. These classifications are solids, like paper, wood, or cloth. Then you have combustible liquids like gas or oil, paint thinner. You have electrical fires that can be in switches, fuse boxes, motors. Okay, and then you have combustible metals such as titanium and magnesium. An additional one not on this slide is cooking fires. Okay, cooking material like oil and grease. Fire extinguishers are marked on a sticker of different colors and the letters A, B, C, or D in the middle of the sticker. A is for wood, paper, cloth, trash, or other ordinary materials. Okay, it could be water, it can be a foam spray, it can be ABC powder, or it can be wet chemicals. Okay, B is a fire extinguisher designed for gasoline, oil, paint thinners, and other flammable liquids. It can be foam spray, it can be ABC powder, it can be carbon dioxide. We cannot use water on gasoline or oily materials. C may be used on fires involving electrical components. Okay, it can be done without damage, without danger to the operator. Okay, we cannot use water or foam spray on electrical fires. D is for combustible metals and alloys. Okay, ABC powder or carbon dioxide. The whole purpose is to snuff the fire out by depriving it of oxygen. K is for cooking media such as vegetables and stuff like that. Vegetable oils, animal oils, and other fats. Okay, it's a wet chemical. Again, it's used to just snuff the fire out. We do not use water on that type of fire. So the only fire you can really use water on is the A, the ordinary combustible materials. Welding and cutting is considered hot work by the National Association of Fire Protection. Whenever welding or cutting is done outside the shop, the welder may require a hot work permit from the local fire department. Many of the safety hazards involving arc welding and cutting deal with the dangers of work with and around electricity. A safety inspection of the arc welding station should be made regularly by the welder. Cable connections should be checked for tightness, and the electrode holder or welding gun should be checked for cracked insulators, loose connections, or worn or cut hoses. To avoid electrical shock, the welder should never work with wet or damp gloves or stand on wet or damp floors. An arc welding shield with the correct filter shade number lens must be worn while welding. The face shield protects the face, eyes, and neck from burns caused by ultraviolet or infrared rays emitted by the electrical arc. Arc welding must also be done with good ventilation, with proper protective clothing, and with the same precautions as general shop safety. Ventilation should always be arranged so that the fumes are picked up before they reach the welder's eyes, nose, or mouth. The hazards from toxic fumes are the same for arc welding process as they are for any other form of welding. So again, safety plays a big role in all these procedures. The biggest one that you want to really talk about on safety is, and think about, is A, the pressurized container, the cylinder safety. You don't want them to fall over. You don't want to leave the regulators in it, and you need to make sure it's always in a secure location. Don't let it roll around your truck. Okay, and then just be aware of the fumes and the heat and the light that is generated by any welding or cutting operations.